let me start off by saying the purpose of this meeting is to give the Buildings and Grounds Committee an update on where we stand with the architect RFQs. But more importantly, and I will take on this myself, after reviewing the request for qualifications with architects and then having discussions with people in the office, I didn't realize how much work Schneider Electric has already done for us within the district. And we're going to log those guys on in a minute or two here. They'll go through what past projects they have done, and then we'll talk about what they're proposing in regards to replacing the boilers in each of the three elementary buildings. But in regards to the RFQs, I did get 5 responses back, and they're all very good responses. Obviously, the majority of them want to come out and do a feasibility study on the place first. Architect fees in the proposal range from $165 an hour to $195 an hour. Project manager fees range from $135 an hour to $165 an hour. Again, with understanding now what Schneider Electric can do for us under Act 39, what they've already done for the district. Purpose of me calling this meeting is have Schneider Electric propose a plan to, in lieu of naming an architect, do this project under the Act 39 Guaranteed Energy Savings Act. And again, because of the relationship of what they've done within the York School District already, I think it's worth listening to them and what they have to propose under this. So with that being said, and I know one of the guys from Schneider Electric has another 7 o'clock meeting. With that being said, I'd like to let them into the meeting, and then we can listen to their presentation, and then ask any questions, and then go from there.
And this is
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
And this is in regard specifically for the boilers.
Right, but they'll do an independent audit study of each of the 3 elements and see what else might be there. So.
I know you and I talked on the phone briefly about it, and I just wanted to verify, because I know nobody else heard our conversation, but we do not need to have an architect of record.
Correct.
Right. For York School District at this time.
At this time, we do not. Schneider Electric will so-called be that in place of and handle all the bid specifications and whatnot for these particular projects.
And then moving forward for other projects, we would make the decision whether we want to move forward with the stuff that they've already done or look for a different architect of record.
Correct. Correct. Yes. Thank you.
All right. You want me to let him in?
Yes. Hi, Larry.
There's no connecting audio. There we go. Can you hear us, Larry?
I can. Very good. Thanks.
How about Kirby and Dave?
Hi, Dr. Sarden. Great to see you again.
Hi, Dave. How are you?
Doing great, thanks.
And that's the background you chose right now?
Yeah, it's I didn't get the option to blur my background, so that's what you get.
All right, all right. That is one way to go, Dave. That's one way to go. Okay.
It's the finest art I own, honestly.
Hi, Kirby. It's nice. I don't know if I don't remember ever meeting Larry. Maybe I did, but hi, Kirby. It's nice to see you. It's been a long time.
Yes. Good evening.
So we want to have them do introductions real quick.
Yeah, if you want to start with us, I'll let you.
Sure. So we'll do some introductions here. Obviously, I'm Gianna Sarden. I'm the current superintendent for the York School District, and we'll just kind of go around.
Steve Kenders, School Board.
Greg Nogi, School Board.
Lisa Trainer, Director of Facilities Transportation.
And Jim Meyer, Business Manager. And I want to thank you guys for taking time today to meet with the Buildings and Grounds Committee here. We've had some preliminary discussions about some possible projects here in the district, specifically the boilers at each of the 3 elementary buildings. With that, Dave, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can do your introduction.
Oh wait, Alan's online. Alan.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, I'm here. Al
Okay.
Novacek, School Board.
Thank you.
So Dave, the floor is yours.
I appreciate that. So first off, thanks everyone for taking the time to meet with us. It's great to reconnect with the district. So my name's Dave Kramer with Schneider Electric. As you might guess, the Kramer connection is the reason for my background. I was the account manager for our initial project back in 2013, and I can't believe it's been that long now that I say that out loud, but really over that span of time, built a great relationship with Dr. Sardin and Lisa and a couple of the current board members that don't appear to be on the Buildings and Grounds Committee right now.
I wasn't.
Greg would have been here back then.
Oh, perfect. Great. I guess something I'd just like to say off the bat, I've spent about 11, 12 years serving Western PA K-12, and I genuinely mean this when I say YAC was, from both an admin and school board perspective, one of my favorite districts I ever dealt with. Really great group of people and thrilled to be re-engaged with you. So before I get into introducing Kirby and Larry, I want to give just a quick background for those that may not be as familiar with Schneider or the work that we've done together. So we did, back in 2013, as I mentioned, about a $1.25 million project. And what we accomplished together were the secure entryway modifications, lighting upgrades, building envelope improvements, and water conservation measures. And that project was paid almost entirely through the utility savings that it achieved. So the big win for the district was taking student safety and security very seriously at that point, especially, and getting to do that work with very little to no capital contribution required. So that was the emphasis behind the original project. And we entered the district's world as a bit of an unknown in a competitive situation and presented to the school board. I think what stood out was our focus on the district's goals, and in particular, supporting the 5-year plan, which it was pretty neat to see you guys still carry that forward. I think that's a great idea. I think what drove such a strong connection was we really listened to the district's needs and prioritized them accordingly, stayed within the financial parameters that were established, and just our deep levels of engagement along the way earned the trust of both the admin and school board and led to the great project that we did have together. So hopefully that was a helpful quick background. We can dive deeper as necessary, but I'd like to introduce the two colleagues I have with me tonight, Larry Myers and Kirby Sleer. Some may remember Kirby. He helped lead key aspects of the project originally, and Larry's been my longtime counterpart covering K-12 across Pennsylvania. I've transitioned to a different role within Schneider. I still have a similar function, but I'm now the North American program manager for our commercial and industrial sector. So I have stayed connected though with some long established relationships, and when Jim reached out, it was the perfect opportunity to bring Larry in. We've done that already with a couple of my prior clients looking to partner again, and it's been a pretty seamless transition getting Larry up to speed and in position to support. So that's what I'd like to do tonight. So with that, Kirby and Larry, I'd like to maybe turn the floor over to you, and hopefully I didn't steal too much of your thunder, but Larry, why don't you get us going next, please?
All right, very good. Thanks, Dave. And Dr. Sardin, you may recall it was quite a while ago. I know when we were first competing for this project, while Dave was the lead, Dave and I actually stood in the front of that room right there, and it looks very familiar to me. And we presented, the credentials and qualifications and whatnot of Schneider Electric. So great to be re-engaged. I know Dave did a great job in developing the project back in 2013 into 2014. And I'd like to think I played just it was a very small part at that time, but great to be re-engaged.
It's bad memory on my part. I am getting older. So
No, that's fine. I looked much better back then.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah. But no, great to be here. And Jim did reach out to us, and very pleased to come to you tonight and kind of talk a little bit about some of the wants and needs that you have. And before I do that, I do want Kirby just to say hello and understand that Kirby is one of the rocks in our Harrisburg office. And in terms of developing projects, Kirby, go ahead and just, talk a little bit about what your role would be.
Sure. So just as I did with Dave back in 2013 and 14, I work with Larry on this project and develop it, working with our subject matter experts, and assemble the project, making sure that we're listening to you folks as to exactly what you're looking for, and then bring it to fruition with the appropriate contract.
Yeah, thanks, Kirby. And like I said, it's great to have that that common thread with Kirby. He saw the first project. He actually was very engaged in doing the initial surveys of a number of the school buildings, if not all of them. And so he does have some background and history with the schools that the elementary schools specifically that are in question here for the boilers. With that, what I'd like to do, and I kind of talked with Jim a little bit about this, is what would you like me to kind of get to kind of set the tone for how we might move forward. And so one of the things that we talked about was, and Dave started this, was to talk a little bit about the previous project. I think Dave did a pretty good high-level discussion about that. I do have a few things that I can share. If you want me to share my screen, I can do that. But quite frankly, I want this to be less of a presentation and more of a discussion, quite frankly. So I'll leave that to you. Is it fair if I share some items?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. And I gave you permission. You should be able to do that.
Okay. And hopefully I will do this correctly. And so let me go to, I gotta move our faces because it's in the way. And let me go here. So I believe, Jim, did you share these documents with the team?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So I'm guessing you probably have this in front of you. This is a piece that we put together regarding the project. And again, nothing special here. Dave talked to most of this, but yeah, here's the project cost. And at the time when we first developed the project, we anticipated that the 15-year savings would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 million. So almost self-funded. But there's more to that story, and I'll get to that in just a second. And again, Dave talked to some of the scope of the work, and it was at the time, the Guaranteed Energy Savings Act allowed projects that would last up to 15 years. And this particular project lasted the full 15 years. In other words, the cash flow was illustrated and the savings were illustrated over 15 years. And so it was basically, if I remember right, the construction was completed in May of 2014. So the project had a life of 2014 to 20. Now this says 2034. I'm thinking that probably should be 2029 now that I think about it. And it's probably a typo on our part. But the one thing I wanted to point out was we did anticipate when we developed the project and put together the projected savings that it would produce $1 million worth of savings. But this is from the actual savings report that was developed after we installed the scope and then came back and did what we call post-project measurements of the savings generated, specifically from the lighting. And one of the things that you find is that the savings were actually greater in each year. than what we had initially projected. And so we exceeded savings over the 15 years by 195,000. So the true savings that you should be realizing from this project over the 15-year term is 1,192,000. And if you remember, the project was 1,235,000. So really, it is very close to being self-funding. And one thing that you see here is there's no escalation in the savings year over year for the lighting savings, nor the building envelope, nor any of the water conservation. And so if you take into account even 1 or 2% of escalation that probably would be likely to have occurred, this certainly paid for itself. So I just wanted to point that out. We're very pleased and with the way the project turned out. We'd like to think you are as well. And again, this is something that we tout as we talk about projects that we've worked on in the Pennsylvania market. Any questions with that? All right, I'm going to take that as a no. The other thing I wanted to touch on was the idea of the Guaranteed Energy Savings Act. And I believe you may have this in front of you as well. And I'm going to blow it up a little bit so that we can talk to this a little bit better. And so the way the Guaranteed Energy Savings Act works, and I think you got a sense of this when we looked at this previous example, is that we are able to do a series of scope. In this case, in the previous case, was lighting and building envelope and some other things. And we're able to generate some savings over time. So if this is your utility spend, if you had done nothing, your utility spend would continue to grow. But with the project, we're able to reduce your utility spend. And this is not specific to your project. It's just an illustration. But the idea is that, yeah, your utility spend will continue to grow, but it grows at a slower rate because it's a smaller number. And so the area in between here, this green shaded area, those are the dollars that we're able to capture in the project. And those dollars are, in essence, what funds the project over time. And so there's some real advantages to using the Guaranteed Savings Act. And you can see some of them here. And in other words, you get everything all done up front. You know what the implementation cost is. There's no price escalation over time. There's no change orders with this process because it's a guaranteed program delivery. And you immediately start to leverage those savings over time and so on. In the traditional approach, if you do like a piecemeal approach, you do a little bit this year and a little bit next year and a little bit next year, eventually you start to weed away at that energy cost. And so you do start to reduce your energy spend over time. But because you take more time to do it, you're losing some of this, what we call opportunity cost. So you lose some of those savings that you don't achieve. But then even over time, because you delayed the process, you never really get down to the low numbers that the Guaranteed Energy Savings Project approach can develop. And any questions with that? And then, so
No.
let me just, go ahead.
No, I said no.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you. And so just another way to illustrate this is, today you're spending dollars, you're sending those dollars to the utility, whether it's electric, natural gas, water, sewer, and whatnot, and you're getting some services back. The whole idea of the Guaranteed Energy Savings Act is to kind of cut that path, those dollars. And yeah, you're still going to send some dollars to the utility, but we want to capture some of those dollars and basically reinvest them back into yourself. And that's what we just illustrated, either through this mechanism here or through the example of the project that we did. And quite frankly, You get more bang for your buck when you use the Guaranteed Energy Savings Act, because you're able to implement those dollars sooner, faster, and right away. In terms of, we've talked about boilers. Well, that's exactly the kind of thing that the Guaranteed Energy Savings Act was designed to help you address, right? Address HVAC needs, address building controls, address lighting and electrical appliances, all the mechanical systems, and in some cases, roofing and windows and things of that nature. So really is designed to create a new shell or a new building that can reduce the energy spend and operate more efficiently. That's the whole idea behind the Guaranteed Energy Savings Act. And so addressing boilers is certainly in the wheelhouse of what the act was developed for. Any questions with that?
So as you would do, here's my question.
Sure.
So as you do an investment grade audit of our facilities with regard to the boilers, is there anything else that when you're doing that audit of the facilities for the boilers, is there any other energy savings that you look at as you do that, or is it just would strictly be based on the boilers?
I really think that's dependent upon direction that we would get from one, the board, but two, the admin team too. We certainly are open to looking for other opportunities, and it's been since 2013, 2014 since we've really done what I call the deep dive into the facilities. And so technologies have changed. We just got through a COVID thing. There's new offerings that we have to help alleviate some of the ventilation air and potential contaminants that may be circulating through your HVAC system. We could potentially address that if that's of interest to you. But not only that, there's new technologies that have come out since 2013. So we've got new ways of producing energy savings and or reliability or resiliency in how your buildings use energy. And so if you'd like us to dig into that a little bit, we certainly would be happy to do that. But again, it would be, we'd want to kind of sit down with you and have a discussion of what's important. Obviously the boilers are kind of the key aspect and the reason for moving forward with the project. But like the lighting paid for most of the upgrades of the secure entrances in the previous project, there may be something that we can do in those regards that would drive additional savings to help either get more building controls or something different with the boilers or address another need that you might have.
This might be a question for Kirby, but in your audit back in 2013, was there anything in that report that stuck out that maybe we didn't address as a district back then that it would be worth a second look at? I mean, you had gone through about the entranceways and the water conservation. Was there anything else that maybe stuck out in that 2013 audit that wasn't addressed that maybe should be looked at again?
Kirby, I can tackle that if you'd like to follow up.
Go ahead,
Larry,
Dave.
you're on the document. So,
There we go.
Jim, that was you who asked that, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So I find it interesting, actually, if you'll take a look, kind of in the middle of that chart,
I'm trying
mechanical improvements. At the time, I think we anticipated the boilers at all three elementary schools were nearing end of useful life. So number one, just your current effort, I think, is well founded and was understood at the time to be becoming a need and a potential upgrade. However, I look at the controls and Larry, if you scroll down a little bit, Jim, without getting into a little bit further, Larry, there's a more of a financial chart.
This one.
Yeah. So Jim, when I look at this, I know you took care of the roof and most of the things that are mentioned there were executed under the project, maybe the exception obviously being mechanical, but also the building automation system, that carried a pretty heavy price tag. So, you know, you'd need to be careful. It wouldn't necessarily be a financial play, though we anticipated being able to partially fund that work through savings. But I think you're probably still operating pneumatic controls. Maybe there are some challenges with the functionality or comfort control. So I would say from a non-savings perspective, maybe there's an operational or a student comfort benefit to looking at that, and maybe there's a controls link to the mechanical work that would happen anyway. So that's one thing that comes to mind. The other I would point out is actually, again, the lighting. I know that the current system has not eclipsed the full 15 years. That's actually okay. Mike Robleski and I a couple years ago explored this, and the financials were there to justify the steep improvement in technology that LED has made. If you think back to when we did the project, some of that was LED and some was not, and things have changed to the degree, and the fixtures, the tubes are so efficient now that it's entirely possible to not only cover the remaining balance of the existing project, but actually drive even more savings. It's a little bit complex because of the past project needing paid off, but I have run some numbers previously when Mike and I were discussing that. So I would offer that to Larry's point, if the district is interested, those would be some of the areas I would look at. But again, it would really be dependent on your priorities and needs.
Yeah, and just to talk to that briefly, one of the first LED projects that I did for a school district with one of my other clients, Kirby, I think it was 2016 was when we did LED lighting for the first time. And we were installing, if I recall, I think they were 18-watt lamps, LED lamps, which provided tremendous savings over the 32-watt fluorescents that they had there. But today, the LED lamps are at the 10.5 watt, per lamp vintage. That's how efficient they are. And they're providing as much light as a 28 watt fluorescent lamp. So yeah, there could be opportunities, but to Dave's point, it's got to fit the economics.
I think personally, I would want to look at any mechanical replacements, just because I think it's integral with what we're doing.
Correct.
As opposed to looking at other projects, I
Yeah.
think kind of stick with the project that we're on. Any mechanical equipment that could possibly give us some savings.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It'd be worth the discussion longer.
I agree.
I won't speak for everybody else.
Yeah, the only other thing I was thinking, and I don't know how that would fall within this, and this is something that, based on COVID and all those things, is the ventilation
I was
stuff.
going to say that.
So the ventilation issue coupled with the boilers and mechanical might be something to think about too. Lisa and I have had a lot of discussions about our ventilation and those types of things. So that might just be something we at least investigate more than.
Yeah, I would.
Yep.
But ventilation is always an issue just because our systems are.
I agree. When you did say that, it stood out in my head too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I agree. Longer.
But the boilers are obviously and evidently the priority because they were important in 2013 and we're getting to the point where, get moving, so.
Yep, understood. Yeah, and again, one of the things that we commonly do as we start to walk through some of these buildings, and right now, the way the audit is set up, it's focused on the 3 elementary schools. But again, if there's a system that you'd want us to look at in one of the other schools, we certainly could do that too. We commonly will come in and kind of give you, kind of a high level assessment of the systems that are there. and give you an idea of, you know, what we think, which systems are performing well and which ones are kind of nearing the end of life. And so we'd be happy to offer those comments as well.
So it would be a similar process than it was the last time as far as, you know, we have a meeting, talk about what we want to have audited, and then you guys go out and you do that.
Exactly. Yeah. It's an iterative process. And again, we don't walk away, you know, with that information. We don't walk away and go design something in a bubble. We're going to be having regular communications with you as we go along, and specifically there'd be like a midterm report that we would want to bring back to the Buildings and Grounds and potentially the board as a whole, to kind of discuss what we're seeing, what some of the options might be, and try to kind of narrow the focus of the project so that we're not going off developing 20 things when you're really only interested in 4 or 5.
That was a similar process we did the last time when we did this project, was exactly that. Like, we had meetings with the Buildings and Grounds. I don't remember, Greg, if you were on that committee or not. You might have been.
I was.
Mr. Spooty was on it
Yeah.
at that time, but yeah, so a similar process, I would think, to that.
Right. Dave, did you want to add anything to that?
No, Dr. Sarden, you remember exactly right. And what we're looking at is actually, we broke it into a phase 1, phase 2 type of approach. Just, I think, largely because of maybe the unfamiliarity with each other and what your goals were. We thought it made sense together to follow a path where we did a fairly comprehensive investigation, produced the results that you're seeing on the screen, and then phase 2 was a narrowing to the scope that was ultimately executed, because that's what met your goals and financial parameters. So you're absolutely correct.
Well, I think, and I'm not speaking for the whole committee, but our goals, and this is from our prior discussion, Larry, our goal is to look at the boilers, look at the mechanicals, and come up with some type of a project or a timeline to do that. The district is in a position right now that we could invest in capital money into this. It's been on our capital projects list for a number of years now. So we're in that position that we can probably move forward with it, you know, obviously depending on the total cost. So are you looking, can you maybe review some type of a timeline that that we would have to follow or act on? If we were looking to get maybe some projects done this summer, if that fits into your guys' calendar?
Yeah, so Kirby and I were talking about that a little bit today, and you know, so obviously what we'd like is for the audit agreement that I believe you also have in front of you, to have that approved at the March meeting and executed. And then that would allow us to then move forward, have the you know, what we call the kickoff meeting, and start to have those interactions with you. And then also get Kirby and some of his team members out to start looking at the buildings. In terms of getting everything done this summer, I think that's going to be scope dependent. In terms of boilers, you know, I think it's going to be certainly doable to get boilers installed. But when we start to look at some advanced mechanicals and whatnot, it's going to be dependent upon the systems that get designed in and how complicated, or I shouldn't say that, but maybe how much of a change that might take place. In other words, if we're doing a 1-for-1 change out, that's much easier than going to, say, a new approach or adding air conditioning where it wasn't before, things of that nature. So depending on the complexity, we probably would be looking at working through the summer and probably into some additional months through the fall. But if we're trying to address heating season, certainly we'll have everything up and running so we can address the heating season and have those items taken care of. But again, if we start doing something a little bit more comprehensive, maybe that's the word I should have used. If we start to do something a little more comprehensive, then those will be conversations that we'll have early on, if it looks like we're going that way.
That makes sense.
Does that help answer the question? I'm trying to say, yeah, we can take care of the heating system, but I'm trying to be vague enough to cover myself in case we get into something complicated.
Well, we appreciate it. Our biggest thing is, quite honestly, our biggest thing is the boilers, because at the end of the day, they need to be replaced. I mean, there's no question about that. And that needs to be our first and utmost priority, because we don't want to go into another fall season, because if a boiler goes down, we're in trouble here. I mean,
Right. Right. Yeah. And we certainly understand that, and we empathize with that too. So, believe me, we do not want the building not to open because of something we did.
Yeah, I'd be mad at that.
Yeah.
I think all of us would.
Yeah.
We're on the same page there?
Yeah.
Oh, I think we all understand that one, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So first step then is to take this agreement to the board as a whole and get it approved. So I guess the question to the committee is, does the committee feel comfortable presenting this as an agreement to the board? Do we need for Kirby, Larry, and Dave to come to that meeting to do a presentation? I mean, I guess that's the question of the committee.
I would say that we should be able to present it to the board. You okay with that, Al?
Yeah, I'm okay with that, definitely.
Right?
Yeah.
As a committee, I think we can do that.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll be good, and if, once we do that, is this agreement here, is this like the final that would be presented to the board? Is there any changes, or is this an example?
No, this is the intended contract. Yeah.
Okay.
It should look pretty similar to what you had before.
So talk to us for a second, because they'll need to know this as a committee of the board. So you come in, we approve the agreement, we meet with the committee, you start the audit. So talk a little bit about any costs or anything like that the committee would need to know about, because that's going to be a question that our board is going to ask.
Yeah, so the obligation that you'd be entering into if you execute this, and let me just kind of get through this. So it's an agreement between Schneider Electric Buildings Americas and the school district. And the second page is what I call T's and C's, the terms and conditions. And it's kind of the legalese behind it. The third page is what we're going to deliver. So we're going to provide you with an audit report at the end that kind of outlines a project that meets the characteristics that you want from the project. And you're going to give us access to the facilities and get us our utility bills and things of that nature, and allow us to have conversations with key folks. So what you're obligating yourself to is, if we produce an audit report and you move forward with it, the costs incurred in developing the audit report and all the studies that have been done up to that date will get rolled into the cost of the project. So when we deliver you the audit report, you will have a given scope at a given cost, no change orders. You'll know what the savings, anticipated savings will be, and what the guarantee will look like, and any additional services that might be included in with that. If you move forward with that, then the costs of getting there are built into the project. They're built into that project price. But if we get to the end of this process, we produce the audit report, and you say, you know what, it's just not what we had hoped, then what we're asking is that you pay us a fee equal to 3% of the total cost of what we developed, with a not to exceed price of $27,000. So basically 3% of a $900K project, $900,000 project, is $27,000. So that's kind of what you're on the hook for. That would have to come, out of your operating expenditures somewhere. But quite frankly, none of us want to collect that 27,000. You don't want to pay it. We don't want to collect it. Quite frankly, we want to be able to develop a project that you'd be happy with and you'd move forward with. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
And based on Big Street, we're only talking the 3 elementary buildings right now.
Correct.
Yeah, the three buildings outlined.
So there's nothing extra in here for this plan, it's just.
Right, just these three.
Yeah, the intent is, as I understood it, was to look at the 3 elementary schools. Again, if you want us to look at a couple other systems in some of the other schools, I'm sure I could twist Kirby's arm and make him do it.
Hey, Larry, if I could add something. So just for the B&G committee, one of the positives here is our past experience with your facilities, the past investigation that was done. There's a lot we can glean there. And I think while, yes, we do provide a report, I guess keep in mind that once we really align on the direction of what it is you want to get accomplished, I think there will be some good early efforts to vet that. But the investment grade audit is really intended to design your project. You're not just getting a report and a study, you're getting a designed, implementation ready end product. So that the deliverable is really setting up for actual implementation of work. I just want to clarify some of the value there.
Yeah, that's a good point. So to give you an idea of timelines, and I probably shouldn't commit Kirby to this, but generally we can turn this audit around in 60, 90 days. So assuming we're under contract, have this executed mid-March, so mid-April, mid-May, mid-June, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of the end of May. We'd probably, if I could twist his arm, probably be ready for the June meeting with a potential project that the board could potentially act on, so that we could be under contract to go to construction pretty quickly after the kids are out of school.
In this audit, of course, we've all agreed that the main focus is the boilers, but are you going to give us kind of a menu per se that would let us look at the 2 other things that we mentioned, the mechanical ventilation, as options?
Yeah.
So that we could review all that at one time and kind of, pick from the menu, like, okay, A, we definitely want the boilers done, and B and C are these things, these would be the costs for these things. If you want to proceed with those, then we add those in or whatever.
Yeah, so, and I saw Kirby shaking his head yes there, so I'm going to speak for you a little bit, Kirby, and if I say something wrong, jump in. But yeah, that's the whole idea of the first part of this development process. And I mentioned kind of like a midterm review. We will come back to you pretty quickly, probably within a month and a half maybe, and give you what we believe are some good options for you in terms of not only the boilers, but additional scope that you may want to consider. And really the idea, now, we won't have final numbers at that time. We're going to have our estimators put values to the cost of implementing that. And our energy engineers will develop potential savings for that scope too. So yeah, the quick answer is, yeah, we're going to come back probably end of April, beginning of May with what we believe are some good options for you to consider. And at that point, we're kind of saying what we'd like to do is focus in on which of the options you'd like us to develop to the next step. And So absolutely, yes, you get that opportunity to look at what everything we're thinking.
Any other questions?
How about your contractors? How do you determine what contractors?
I could go ahead.
Yeah.
How do you determine what contractors you're going to use for our specific project?
What contractors will use? Was that the question?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So that can vary by scope. There are some scope of work like the lighting. We have a couple of basically partner companies that we have done about 90% of our lighting scope with. So if we're doing lighting, I'm going to tell you, we'll probably be looking to work with one of those 2 or 3 companies that we've worked with pretty exclusively. But when it comes to other scope, like the mechanical scope, chances are it's going to get bid out among 2, 3, or 4 mechanical contractors that we have used in the past. And I can give you an example. We're working with a school district up in McKean County right now, and it's a significant mechanical scope that we're working with. It's probably close to it's about $4 million worth of HVAC work, and they're using some of their ESSER funds that they've received as part of that. So we're putting together the bid packages for them that meet the federal guidelines for procurement. So we're actually putting it out for bid with a number of mechanical contractors, and those bids will be due mid-March. And so that is typically the approach that we would be taking. And again, if you wanted to apply any of the ESSER funds that you've gotten to date, or any future funds that, it sounds like they're talking about around 3 now, we certainly could work with the school district in putting together proper bidding procurement events.
That was the whole reason why I asked that question about contractors.
Yeah. So yeah, we don't want anybody in an orange jumpsuit. None of us, nor none of you. And yeah, we'll make sure that the procurement events are done appropriately.
Yeah, the most important thing with the ESSER funds is that they have to meet the federal bidding guidelines.
Right.
You guys are aware of that. So.
Yep. We're very much aware of that, and we have a process to handle that.
Which is good, because that is a complicated process. Once you're over $250,000,
yeah,
there's grant money for that. There's a lot of hoops you have to jump through. So having somebody that knows and understands that process is important, because I know in our conversation, whether through PASA or through PASFO, that was a big part of the conversation is once you hit that $250,000 of a federal grant, those monies become very cumbersome as far as the paperwork, the procurement, and making sure, because procurement at the federal level is different than at the state level. So.
Yep, exactly. And again, we've developed the process that meets those guidelines, and we've had a couple solicitors kind of review it, and so I think we're safe.
And Larry, maybe to supplement that, we have a network and a good working history with several mechanical firms. One that I have in mind is quite close to you and has done work at the IU and West Mifflin area with us. And I'm working with them at US Steel at the Mon Valley Works facility right now, amongst others that we have though in the region as well. So those are groups that we can alert to this bidding event and make sure that you're getting a good quality partner.
Yeah, and Dave, I know you probably aren't aware of this, but we're also talking to them for the Port Allegheny project. So, yeah.
Great.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I know Larry has to jump off here. Does anybody have any other questions for Larry specifically?
No.
Not I.
on the other, do you have anything?
Anybody else?
Good.
We're good. So
Okay.
our next step as a committee here would be to talk about the audit upgrade agreement and propose that to the full board at our March meeting.
All right, very good. And Jim, I know I did talk with you. I'm not available to come to the committee of the whole meeting. I believe that's what you said. Committee of the whole is next week.
March 2nd, yeah.
Yeah, and then March 9th would be the voting meeting. So unfortunately, I'm not available for next week. But if you'd want me to come to the meeting on, what would that, March 9th, I can do that, and I'd be happy to. I can attend either in person or virtually if you want me to do that. But regardless, I'd be happy to be there to answer any questions that may come up.
I think the committee can probably handle it, but we'll know better after March 2nd, probably.
Yeah.
All right, very good.
We'll be in touch after we get through the second in case there's any follow-up questions or anything like that. Jim will call you.
Yes. I'll be in touch with you, Larry.
Very good. Thank you, folks. I appreciate the time. Dave, thanks for jumping on. Kirby, you too. And again, if I speak for the three of us, we're very excited to be re-engaged with Yacht and really appreciate the fact that you're thinking of us and that you're coming back for more of good stuff. So appreciate it.
Only if Dave gets rid of that background for the next.
I appreciate it, guys.
All
All right.
Hey, thanks so much for the time.
Thank you,
Great seeing
guys.
everyone again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good
Have a
night.
good night.
So we don't have any, you're in charge of other business, you have anything else?
Yeah, does anybody have anything else? My only comment is with all this, each month in the board packet, we put a capital projects list together. It has about $1.275 million on it. 260,000 of that is for the sewage treatment plant over the middle school, so that'll be taken care of. Our estimates, rough estimates for the three boilers is somewhere around 400,000. So, getting these projects, the boilers and the treatment, that takes care of half of our list. And then the next biggest thing on there are the exterior doors. Is that what you mean? Exterior doors.
We do, we have some exterior doors, and I don't know if that could fall under this with.
And that's what we're looking into, because it might fall under some, the stimulus CARES money, we might be able, that and some ventilation issues that we're going to start looking into that can fall under the CARES Act and use money to address some of those issues. So by moving forward with these two projects, I mean, it takes a good chunk of money off capital improvements. And I still think me as a business manager, we as a board, we'll need to look to start putting a little bit of money away for out of our general operating budget for future capital improvement. Now, I say that cautiously now with the whole COVID situation and whatnot, but that's something we should consider, eventually build something into our general operating budget so that we have projects that we want to tackle here as a district. We have a pot of money that's reserved for that to do any other facility upgrades that we want to do.
In the event that we're blindsided by something, what kind of rates are we looking at now if we as a district had to take a loan to say we didn't have $400,000 to do this project with boilers, and we had to take a loan right now? I'm just curious, like where we would be sitting interest wise or whatever.
The bonds we just refinanced for 2%.
Now, some of this cost, you said, is coming out of the CARES Act, right?
The boiler cost would come out of our bond refunding we just did.
Okay.
But there's a couple other projects. So for example, our exterior doors across the district are poor, right? We all know that. So we may be able to take some funding that's coming out of the research money that's coming across. We don't know our final allocations for that yet, but there is a possibility that some of those exterior doors, the ventilation stuff because of the COVID situation. Like, we may be able to take some funding out of that additional monies that's coming. It won't take from our construction fund, but we take out of those for those one-time expenses. Because obviously with any grant money, you want to use it for one-time expenses and not recurring expenses. So a couple of those bigger projects that are on that list, the exterior doors is one, ventilation is another. We may be able to use this additional research money to do that. And it is, from what we can tell, it is a pretty significant amount of money that we may get from that. We're still waiting on the exact numbers, but it would cover the cost of those. So we're kind of in a good spot right now in a good time frame. And all those things apply to either safety, security, ventilation, COVID. I mean, so there's a lot of benefit to some of these funds that are coming that aren't going to hurt us going forward in the future. So
there's kind of some strict rules on how you can spend that money. They really wanted a one-time expenditure, but that's why we're trying to get some interpretation on the doors and the ventilation system. Some of the building controls, because or whatnot, if we may do.
Have you ever in the past done any estimates or anything? Had any estimates done on the exterior?
they're expensive. We've replaced a few.
Right.
It's like 8,000 a door. I mean, it's like serious cash.
But I mean, like, do we know how many doors we need at $8,000? Or like, I'm just looking. Are we talking $100,000 in doors? Are we talking $70,000?
Well,
I'm looking for
I'll
exact
give you the
number.
idea. On our monthly report,
Yeah.
we have exterior doors district wide, approximately 52 doors, $260,000.
Okay.
And that's probably the medians. There's probably not, you know, you're rating them,
Right.
low, medium, high. That's probably our highest, which there's probably some in the low middle range that they're
Ones that aren't used as frequently or whatever.
correct.
So my question is this, so if, let's say, for example, we go back and we present this to the board, and they put their reports together, okay? And granted, I hope it don't go this way, but if for some reason that we would back out, it said that there would be a $27,000 cost, right?
Maximum.
Maximum. So the reason I asked if, you know, this money's coming out of, we're not getting no grant money for these boilers, correct?
We are not.
That's why I want to know, because if.
The boilers will not fall under the research based on what the project is, and that's why we thought going through this energy savings, it makes more sense to do it that way, because part of the project pays for itself.
So getting back to that, if we would go through with this, we would need to 20, whatever the amount would be if we didn't proceed.
We would.
After the report's done up. That's all I'm done. That's it.
We have to be pretty comfortable moving forward in this.
Yes, exactly. Right, yeah, it's not, yeah, I mean, if we gotta go into the meeting on the second, I mean, it's not.
Right.
And I know one of the questions
You want to
is
get
going to
into
be,
December.
should we take bids on this? That's one of the things that you're going to say. Can we get this study done for less in the event that we want to back? You know, like, I guarantee that's going to be one of the questions, just from questions asked in the past several
Right.
meetings.
And I think our big thing is there's two things surrounding that time frame, because the boilers need to get done. We don't have time, even if we're talking about time frame today,
Oh, yeah.
we're talking June
I don't
project.
disagree.
Yeah,
No, I
so
don't disagree.
I think that piece of it is an important part of it. I think the second piece of it, to stick with them, is they've already 7 years ago evaluated these systems.
they-
You know, they have all the blueprints for the
So
building.
they did,
They have everything,
so.
so it'd probably be more cost effective to have them.
If we were just, I think if we were just willy-nilly, like they said, because they did phase 1 and phase 2 last time, I think if we were just coming in off the cuff, without any knowledge or background, I think that's one thing, but I think, I would hope that everybody would understand that this is a little bit different than when we did this project the last time. The last time was lighting, savings, those types of things with a total audit. This is more, we need to do this, we need to use energy savings. We already have somebody who's helped us with this project and has those drawings in the past. So I'm hopeful, because otherwise there's no, and Jimmy told me, it would be very, very challenging to go out and request
Oh, at
qualification.
this point in time?
It will never get
it
done.
would- Yeah, you would never have them done by the time school starts back up.
I mean, it's gonna be close,
Correct, because
Right
you're
now.
still talking June right
Right.
now.
so.
The one thing I could say, I'm confident, like, you know, when you work on the for Jim's been here working with them before. They've been extremely reliable, very professional, and
They were great the last time.
They were.
I mean, that's a benefit, then you can dig into.
and with the guaranteed energy savings, they have to reach whatever that energy savings is. I mean, that's a requirement. So I think this is a wee little bit different than some of the other things we've done in the past, just because there's a requirement there that although it could cost us that, there's a guarantee back to us as a district, and that's what made that other budget so successful.
It was comforting to know that they
It is comforting to know that they have people that can do that, because that process, basically, they said that's a really challenge.
Make sure everybody sees this so they understand how the saving process works and how it's going to be outlined even for this project.
Yeah.
Because we're going to be looking at kind of the same, different numbers.
Same concept.
Hey, can somebody explain to me, I've never saw it before, what would be the building envelope?
That was our doors. So the doorways, well, there was two things. The building envelope is like, if you were in your house, the air that comes underneath the doors through cracks or between the seams. So we closed all that up as part of that project. There were savings by keeping air inside. The water conservation was putting those water regulators on a lot of their sinks.
I knew those, but I was like, what is that one? I could not.
And then the the entryways, like if you look, West Newton, Mendon, HW, we did a little bit, West Newton, Mendon, HW, we did the high schools, and then I don't think we did those, so we did those 4 entryways where people could buzz and walk into, were all done out of this project, because you're allowed so much of a change off of your energy savings to cover the cost of something else.
Sure. I mean, you probably saw West Newton.
Yeah.
Lauren would have been right age.
Correct.
Stephen might have been a little too old.
You come in, you were just accessed everywhere, so yeah, we were able to change all that.
Yeah, you walked in and there's a little seating area there, walked off.
Yeah.
Office.
Yeah, I mean, I think, these boilers are for that age, and that's a priority.
Yeah.
Don't give us like life expectancy on new boilers and all that for too. Assuming.
Yeah, they'll give us all that, they'll do it.
And I'm still here to provide us energy savings update.
I would like when they come and do a walkthrough, any committee members that are available to do the walkthrough with them. With, whatever the administration does. I know they're gonna be here a lot, but
But maybe the initial, when they go through the initial stuff, yeah, because they'll be here, they'll do a study that'll take a long time, but
exactly,
initial.
yeah, we're not gonna be with them
Yeah.
for hours on end, just to do the walkthrough with them.
And I'm assuming when they start the project, they can go on during school time, the kids being there, like, they can do that.
It depends on the situation or circumstance. I think that the majority, depending on when they would bid that out, it'll be close, so they may have to. And anybody they would use during that project would use people that are credentialed, insured, clearances, all that.
They can do after hours too.
They can do after
Like I
hours.
did 2D mechanical, which I'm guessing is who he was talking about, because they do a lot of the big projects around here. If your office works 9 to 5, they'll come in at 5 p.m. and work till 1 a.m.
And I've worked with Schneider Electric in other projects, and that's exactly what they did. They came in out.
And I'm sure when they do the bid process, that's priced into the after hours. Some companies are gonna have an additional fee if they're expected to work evening hours.
So then in the next meeting, we'll just present this to the whole board.
Yeah, so we'll take, the,
Put it on the
that
agenda.
audit, we're on the agenda under district operations, and then we can have that conversation.
And we'll vote on it on Tuesday.
On the ninth.
Oh,
We'll put it on the
okay,
second, and then we'll vote on it on the ninth.
Greg, to your point, the handouts that you're, I'll send those out, legal reviews, so they can look at it.
Like I said, I just wanted them to be able to see
See, I agree.
that we're gonna have it outlined for us, what the savings is and how some of this work is gonna pay for itself. that period of time.
Yeah, because I did the math. I mean, that last project basically cost $43,000.
Right.
Start to
And it was a
finish,
huge
based on
update
savings.
for us, district-wide, as far as lighting and all this
That
stuff.
was a big update.
Anything else?
Not in regards to what we just talked about.
Yeah.
With this, but I just talked to Janet.
You up to, am I gonna, are we
Yeah.
still going?
Oh, we can go off.